That's all right. Oh, that's my chair. That's good.
Oh,
That's
do you
fine.
want it?
I know, I brought it out here so we have more chairs.
All right, welcome everyone.
Got some feedback.
Shut your mic off
I
there.
had it, I did once.
Or Bruce.
Try now. Better?
I think so. All right, better. Good evening, everyone. At this point in time, I will call the Hamilton Select Board meeting to order at, I'm going to call it 7 o'clock because the clock says close to that. And Jay, do you want to call the kind of CPC together now, or do you want to wait till we get onto the agenda for it? Doesn't
call.
matter. Go for it.
Jay Butler, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. It's just about 7 o'clock on July 17th. Want to call the joint meeting of the CPC and the Select Board. So I'm going to do a roll call of the CPC members. Just say, yes, you're here. I'm here, obviously. Kim Deedle.
Here.
Sean Farrell.
Here.
Michelle is not here yet. Rick Johansson is not here. And I know Sandy Cotting and Robert Preston won't be here. So we have 3 of us. We don't have a quorum of 5, but we're not going to vote on anything, so we're in good shape.
Perfect. All right, so I'll start with the announcements and board openings for the Select Board. We have 2 openings for 3-year terms on the Conservation Commission, 1 opening for a 3-year term and 2 associate openings on the Council on Aging, 1 associate opening on the Finance and Advisory Committee. The Historic District Commission has 2 openings for 3-year terms, 2 openings for a 2-year term. 1 must be a resident of the Historic District, and 1 must be a resident Realtor in Hamilton. Human Rights Commission has 1 opening from the Hamilton Housing Authority residents. 1 associate opening for the Planning Board, 1 Zoning Board of Appeals associate opening. And then we have 3 minutes for any public comment on any topics not already on the agenda. Please come up if you're online. Please raise your hand. And since I see Darcy at the podium, Darcy, just say your name and you can go right ahead.
Oh, yes, I know the drill. Darcy Dale, Woodbury Street in Hamilton. And I just want to do a little bit of questioning. I'm curious what's happening. On April 20th, I was unanimously voted in the affirmative, 7-0, on the planning board for the open associate position. So I have the full confidence and support from the elected planning board members. I was warmly welcomed and was told that the planning board chair would send my application to the select board for the joint vote. The joint vote is when you add the 2 bodies' votes together and get the simple majority. Either way, there is no distribution of votes required. It's a simple majority. And the majority can come from either elected, but the votes can come from either elected body. As a former select board member, I had a hand in the policy and the analysis that gave us the October 13th, 2020 policy, which I will read. The purpose of this policy, and it's called Board of Selectmen Appointments to Multiple Member Bodies. The purpose of this policy is to provide all applicants for appointment to multiple member bodies appointed solely by the Board of Selectmen with a fair opportunity to be considered, to recognize the importance of their willingness to serve the community, and to encourage volunteerism and community involvement. Vacancies in elected positions shall continue to be governed by the provisions of General Laws C-41, Chapter 41, Section 11. I have a couple of questions on the applications and the notice of vacancies. The vacancies, and it says in policy, for purposes, the term vacancy or vacancies shall include vacancies addressed in both sections 1A and 1B. So one would be an expiration of a term, the other one would be a midterm. So for example, when we had our ATM, we had the voting that went on at the ballot box, and that created an opening on the planning board, a vacancy for the associate position. Applications, under that section, applications, review. Following the expiration of the 30-day notice period and no later than 30 days after an application is received, the town manager shall forward the applications for the appointment to each member of the Board of Selectmen and as appropriate to the chair of the respective board or committee. Applicants are encouraged to attend at least one meeting of the board or committee for which they seek appointment and to speak with individual board or committee members to learn about their duties. The Board of Selectmen, or rather the Select Board, shall individually review the applications and any related materials, and as may be necessary from time to time, you may contact the candidates for more information. The Board of Selectmen acknowledges the application of the open meeting law to the appointment process and recognizes that it is preferable that interactions with applicants occur at posted meetings at the Board of Selectmen, at the Select Board. And furthermore, Section B, Board and Committee recommendations. Within 30 days of the receipt of an application, the chair of any board or committee seeking to fill a vacancy shall forward that board or committee's recommendation to the Select Board. The Select Board shall not be bound by such recommendation, but shall give the recommendation reasonable consideration. And under Section 3 of appointments, vote. Following the receipt of the aforementioned recommendation from the chair of the board or committee, the Select Board shall, within 2 scheduled Select Board meetings, vote to select one or more candidates for the appointment at an open meeting called for this purpose. Qualifications, experience, and respective board or committee chair recommendations may be discussed at any such meeting. On April 20th, I was unanimously voted in, again, for the affirmative for the open associate position. And I would like to know if any of you received the application from the town manager within that 30-day window. And are you aware of the open meeting law violations that may have occurred? Within 2 scheduled Select Board meetings, the Select Board members shall vote on the appointment before them. And I'm following up on this process to make sure the open meeting law is being observed by the Select Board. And again, this vote is between 2 boards, and they're added jointly. You add up to see where the simple majority lands. There is no required distribution of where those votes come from. The Planning Board is an elected body, so the Select Board cannot overstep these checks and these balances. When can this get done? Put it on the agenda, and can one of you, perhaps intrepid board members, maybe make a motion on the floor tonight to accept the application? And from there, we can go to the next step, which would be in Joe's court.
My court.
Well, thank you, Darcy. You've gone a little bit past the 3 minutes. I think we'll look into all the dates and stuff. If you could send me an email with all
Well,
this
I also
stuff
want
you
to
have.
say that the chairman of the planning board has contacted you numerous times, town manager and you, and I think there's something dysfunctional about this process that's in front of us, because you're not following the bylaw. And when you have that kind of carelessness,
Darcy?
It creates
Darcy,
problems.
Your time is up, and we don't appreciate the language you're using, so thank you very much for coming tonight. We'll look into it. But language, you use your time tonight. We don't
well,
appreciate the
I
language.
think it's
Darcy,
kind of
your time.
dysfunctional when
Darcy,
you
your
have
time
a
is up.
board that doesn't follow our bylaws.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion, and we'll look into it.
No, it's not my opinion. It is Mass General Law, and you can look it up, and you can ask the town solicitor. And I think you're making a big mistake when you're ignoring open meeting law and when you're not treating people who come before you. I don't care how you vote. I just need you to do the process. I've made the application, the time has gone by, and you guys didn't do your part. So it would be good if you could do something about it.
All right, fair enough.
Right?
Thank you,
People
Darcy.
are listening, and they're watching, too.
Okay. All right, at this time, we have National Grid utility hearing. Sorry, we're a little bit past. And this is to consider a request by Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, to run electric conduit under the road on Tally Ho Drive.
I believe Michael Kazadi is here from National Grid.
Yep, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street in Beverly. And for this job, we are just petitioning to install about 5 feet of conduit on Tally Ho Drive from an existing pole 2174 to the property of 29 Sally Hole Drive.
Thank you, Michael. And did we talk about this previously? Is this,
I don't know, I don't believe so. This was a new application.
this is new? Okay.
In June.
For some reason, I remember something on
In your
Tally Hole
package, there's a-
previously.
In your package, there's a map that shows where the conduit would be. It'd be underground from a pole to the property listed as 29 in the assessor's map on Tally Ho Drive. And
Correct.
National Grid did provide proof that all of the abutters were notified.
Yeah. And Michael, how long of a process is this?
This is it should take about a couple hours. It's 1 day.
Okay, so not a major
Yep.
disruption.
Yep.
All right, does anybody have any other questions for Michael? Anybody want to make a motion to approve the,
I move to approve the request from the Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid to run electric conduit under the road on Tally Ho Drive.
Second?
second by Bill? All right, any other questions or discussion?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye, ayes have it. Thank you, Michael, that was easy.
Thank you.
All right, back to our regular scheduled programming. We have some items on the consent agenda. We have approved minutes of January 9th, 2023 Select Board meeting, approved minutes of February 6th, 2023 Select Board meeting, approved minutes of March 6th, 2023 Select Board meeting, approved minutes of March 20th, 2023 Select Board meeting, declare surplus exercise equipment and shelving at the Hamilton Senior Center, approve use of Patton Park for ECTA 5K Trail Run on Saturday, November 25th, 2023, approve Coast to the Cure bike ride for Saturday, September 9th, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it, thank you. All right, and now we have our annual joint meeting with the Community Preservation Committee. Our CPC Chairman, Mr. Jay Butler, is going to do his lovely annual report for us.
Thank you. Let me just read some remarks. I wrote these this afternoon. I didn't memorize them. This annual presentation on all things about the CPC and the Community Preservation Act is made in part to satisfy the requirement for the CPC to host an annual public meeting to solicit ideas about potential grant opportunities. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. As you will see in this presentation, we have a list of some things we see coming in the future, but any inputs would be welcomed from anyone. During the presentation, please feel free to stop me and ask questions as I go. We welcome any comments or helpful suggestions on our activities. Subsequent to this meeting, I'll have Laurie send a PDF copy of the presentation to all members of the Select Board and the FinCom. We'll also post it on the CPC webpage. A more comprehensive source of CPC information will be available in August when the committee reviews and approves the 2023 CPC report, and that will be posted on our webpage as well. Why don't we get started? Next slide, please.
Come on, I won't go down.
You can see we're supposed to have 9 members of the committee. We're running at 7 right now. We have a vacancy from the Historic District Commission and from the Planning Board. Recently, Richard Boroff and Kristen Bridier left the committee. So right now, we're functioning with 7 members. We need a quorum of 5 to vote any grants. And as you can see, even tonight, we don't have a quorum. So it could be an issue going forward. Hopefully, we'll deal with it. Next slide. CPA, the Community Preservation Act, most of you know, was signed into law in September 2000 by then Governor Paul Cellucci. And we adopted the CPA in May of 2005 with a 2% surcharge. An attempt earlier for a 3% surcharge failed. Right now, 195 of the 351 communities in Mass participate, which is 56%. Communities adopting the CPA get to choose from a 1% to 3% surcharge on their property taxes billed quarterly with the property tax bill. It's a separate line on your quarterly tax bill. The CPA trust fund, from which any monies matching come from, is managed by the Mass Department of Revenue, which sets the state match every year and distributes the funds to us in November. The trust fund money comes from the 21 Registry of Deeds offices throughout Mass via the property transaction fees and any potential year-end state budget surplus voted by the Mass Legislature. Next slide. I took a look at the Essex County communities to see who was in, who was out with regard to adopting the CPA. And you can see there's a number of them that have not adopted the CPA. Danvers tried in May of this year, and the vote failed at their town meeting. But you can see that it spread us from 1% to 3%. We're at 2% with Newburyport, and our nearest neighbor, Wenham, is at 3%. Next. I looked at the tax rates in communities in Essex County and compared them against the surcharge, and there is no correlation. But just for the record, Wenham's the highest tax rate. We're second. Amesbury moved up to be with us. Third is Topsfield. The lowest in Essex County is Newbury, followed by Nahat, and then Rockport. In the state, Longmeadow is still a perennial #1 as far as their tax rate, and the lowest is now Edgartown. It was Chilmark last year. Historical CPA trust fund distribution. You can see here the years versus the number of communities participating versus what the state match was. And you can see this started out when the law was first approved, there was a 100% state match, but it's wavered considerably as the number of communities have grown. This past year, you can see it was 38.5%. You'll also see that in at least 5 or 6 years in the past, the state has voted an extra money from the state budget surplus. And you can see how that boosts the returns. Next. This is the Hamilton situation in terms of what we derive from the 2% surcharge on our property taxes, what the state match was, and what our percent state match was, and the total revenue. So this is just a record that shows we've got about $9.5 million out of the CPA Act since its installment in our town. There's a couple of financial trends affecting the match for this year. The collections were down 33.8% at the end of May compared to last year. So what we're seeing is the slowdown in the real estate market, because it's all due to the fees people pay at the registration of deeds. There's a budget amendment that's still alive from the Senate that proposes to add $30 million from the surplus to get the state match up there, but it's still bogged down in the Senate and House budget reconciliations that go on, since they haven't decided the budget yet. There was a similar amendment in the House that got voted down, but we can only hope that the $30 million amendment will hold, because if it doesn't, our match for this year will be considerably less. You can see here what happened in 2022. The monies from the matches it come out in November of each year, and you can see in November 2022 we got 38.5% state match. And I just show Wenham's. Wenham has a 3% surcharge, and as I'm not going to get into those details, but not only did they get the state match percentage, they get extra dollars, fixed dollars, through a very convoluted formula in rounds 2 and 3. And so you can see their total revenue of $760K is a little bigger than ours at $717,000. Calculation, people often ask me, you know, how do you determine what's the calculation? How can I figure it out? If you don't have easy reference to your quarterly tax bill, it's essentially you take the assessed value of your property, subtract the first 100,000, multiply that number times the tax rate, and then multiply that by the 2% surcharge, and that's how you get the number. And you can see here, I've shown on the table the valuation of properties, the annual property tax at $16.34 cents per thousand, and then what the annual 2% surcharge is. So that gives you a sense for how much it's costing the taxpayers in town. There's an exemption. Not everybody needs to pay the CPC surcharge. As I said, everybody gets an exemption for the first 100,000 valuation of their property. And then taxpayers over 65 who get a elderly 41D exemption from the state, or certain exemptions for seniors and low-income non-seniors that you'll see on the next slide. These are the full exemptions. If you fall within these guidelines for annual income for a senior or non-senior, you fully exemption from having to pay the surcharge at all. Next. Some accounting, some explanation of accounting. This question gets asked quite a bit. We have accounting requirements required by the statute where we have to set up separate internal sub-accounts for our reserve funds. There's one for historic preservation, one for open space and recreation, one for community housing. There's an unreserved account, and then there's one for administration expenses. Each year at the annual town meeting, we transfer 10% of the total revenues from the year into each of the three historic, open space, and housing accounts, and 5% into the administrative. The rest of it sits in the unreserved account. However, we don't have to do the 10% if we are granting a bond or paying or giving out a grant in the year. This is where we stand with money in our reserves as of the end of the year. You can see it's $2 million, which is the right number. Under administrative, there's a very large number there that I don't think is right, and Laurie doesn't think is right. We need to dig into that. And we may have to do some transfer of accounts, whether the committee can do it, which I think they might, or we might have to wait till next spring, but it's not going to affect anything going forward. But nevertheless, we have sufficient funds to cover what we're going to do in the near term, and you'll see that in a minute. Just a note on investments, you can see we made quite a bit of money from investments this past year. Peggy McLaughlin's done a great job. We made $58,000 in interest. A couple of years ago, it was $4.
I remember that.
So we've done great things. She's done great things. In terms of the process, we've got a two-step process, three-step process exactly. You got to apply for eligibility, which is a separate application, and we verify that the Cresta can do the project, that it's eligible. The next month, we look at the funding issues, review the cost estimates, determination of our reserves, we can afford it, do we need to bond it, try to identify additional sources of funding. And finally, once we approve for eligibility and for funding, it goes direct to town meeting. It's on the warrant. The interim meetings where the select board and the FinCom bring me in and put the light and grill me about it and why we're doing this, it still goes on the warrant for town meeting. And they have a right, and they do occasionally, put out a document or stand up at town meeting and give advice saying this is maybe, we don't, maybe not want to do this, but that's fine, that's how it works. The first step of the grant process is the eligibility. It's got to fit in one of the three categories: historic preservation, community housing, or open space. This is where it gets bogged down a lot. We solicit advice from the Community Preservation Coalition, the executive director, Stuart Saganor, and our town council, Tom McEnany. The problem is that when we solicit advice from both sources, they're often divergent. They don't always agree. We tend to side with our town council because they would protect us, so, but this is what we go through. The coalition itself is a Boston-based nonprofit that was formed at the beginning, 1990, to help the passage of the CPA. We pay dues into this. They keep records of all grants for all communities. They have technical guidance, they have administrative guidance, they provide any guidance you need for adoptions, for approvals, for grants, whatever, to any communities that need some advice. And we use them quite often. And they have some official support organizations that support them. This is their short form for deciding what's eligible. It's a quickie. It says you can acquire open space, you can acquire something historic, you can acquire recreation, community housing. You can't create anything historic, so, yeah, so that has, you won't qualify, you're creating something. We can preserve things, we can support housing, but we can't really support anything else, and that, it means maintenance. We can't do maintenance on things. It has to be creating something new. The second step of the application process is where we look at the funding to see whether we have enough money to do it. Can the requester find money from somewhere else? Does Wenham have to kick in their fair share? When we approve something, we have to look at our funds. So in those internal funds I mentioned earlier, we first take the money from the historic or the recreation or the housing fund. And if we don't have enough money, we can dip into the unreserved account to gain enough money to support a grant. That's how it works. If we feel it's a big enough nut that we're being asked about, we can consider a bond, and we work with the finance department to see how that might be done. Whoop. Did you jump?
Okay. Did you
Did you
weren't ready yet?
skip one, I think?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
When we do actually bond things, we can only pay the bond repayment premiums from the 2% surcharge. So we get this state match every year, and we get this very large 700K plus number of revenues, but in terms of each year going forward, to pay back a bond we might take out, we have some running, we can only pay the bond repayments out of the 2% surcharge revenues. So we have a limit to how much we can bond things. The town meeting vote for a bond is at 2/3, but you don't have to go to the polls. It's just a 2/3 voted. And then the CPC's got to remain in existence till the bond's paid off, or the town has to pick up the responsibility. Next. We've got a couple of bonds. We have one for the Sagamore Hill. It was, the FY '24 premium is $105,500. It matures in 2032. The original one was a $1.25 million bond for 15 years, plus we had $500K in cash. Looking ahead, Town Hall, we have approved in 2020 a $3 million grant, and in 2021 an additional $1 million grant for a total of $4 million. So we have $4 million bond in virtual escrow for Town Hall. We've been waiting for the project to get approved. We have to look at, going ahead, what's the premium? So I looked at a premium for a $4 million 30-year bond at 4.5%, and it's $313,000 in the second year. The first year is just interest. So we've got to keep that in mind, as well as any grants when we look ahead, because this is the town hall is kind of a virtual thing. Until it gets all approved, we haven't done anything yet. Next. This past year, we closed out a few grants. We gave a grant to the First Congregational Church of Hamilton for belfry and clock tower restoration for $75,000. We will vote to formally close that next month. We gave a grant to the DPW and the Recreation Department for the Patton Park Master Plan for $30,000. That's been closed out. The plan's now complete. It's on our website. And finally, the Community House Centennial Park, an open space for $150,000, and that has been completed and closed out. We approved a couple of grants for next year, one for the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Department for the middle school, high school athletic fields for $800,000 cash. And we've approved one for the town hall for $500,000 cash, but it has to be voted on yet at the special town meeting this fall. Historical distribution of grants since the inception here is that You can see 33 for open space, 46 historic, and 14 for housing, for a total of 93 grants. And the split is 35% open space, 49% historic, only 15% housing. And you can see the dollar numbers. Total dollars is just under $13 million in grants. This is the list of organizations who have received grants over the history of the program. There's only 19 organizations, and you can see that DPW and the Rec Department are at the top, and show the number of grants and what percent it is. Under the historical distribution of grants, there's 93 grants, we're at 13 million, 19 organizations. Town organizations got 11, or 53%, and 76 of the grants, totaling 82%, and dollars received by the town, they got 80% of the money at 10.4 million. So I think we're doing our part to reduce any costs to the town by the number of grants to support town organizations. Now, this is our forward-looking radar, future anticipated potential grants. We divide these things, these potential grants, into 3 categories. Category A, which is an eligible project, pretty good cost estimate, and strong support. We don't have any, which is just as well. Category B, which is, there's some question on eligibility, there's a cost guesstimate, project needs a little more definition. We have a few. The Affordable Housing Trust, we sort of keep that every year on our list, because who knows what might happen with the AHT and what they might want to support as far as community housing. So we keep 250 grand earmarked, if you will. There's no commitment on our part. These aren't committed. This is just our forward-looking radar to remind us every year when we look at grants that we know about these, and we just have to wait. A building to house the ancient hand pumper for the fire department is back again. We had this grant approved many years ago at 35 grand, and it sat approved for 7 years before we decided that it isn't gonna happen, and we voted them off the ranch. But it might come back now because there's interest. We'll see. The town hall heating system is something I put in there because I know we're sort of cutting back on the cost of town hall to get it passed. And I looked back at our history of grants, and we've paid money for the heating system for 2 or 3 times over the years. So I told Tim Olson I was gonna put $500K on my list for a new heating system in case we didn't get around to replacing the current one. No commitment, but it's there. Finally, category C, there's no project really. The costs are unclear. Project supporting question, we have 4 of them. We have a rec project on the Pingree Park tennis courts. It could be skateboard park, which we've been asked about. It could be tennis court renovation, or it could be pickleball. Take your pick. But something is likely to happen with those courts. They've been condemned for years. A new roof for the American Legion building has been on our list for 4 or 5 years, no activity. The Patton Park improvements with the completion of the recent Patton Park master plan. We put it on there as a reminder that we may be asked to contribute some money to the improvements to Patton Park. And finally, I was contacted by the Hamilton Development Corp. About a potential downtown parklet, and they wondered whether or not it might be eligible. I don't know if it is or not, so I put it on the list. Finally, we need more advanced information from organizations intending to apply for grants. We don't often get much, but anything we can get, we'd appreciate. And as I mentioned earlier, there'll be more detailed information on the CPA and the CPA when we finally publish our annual CPC report next month. And finally, our meetings are at 7 p.m. on the 2nd Thursday of each month, where public input is certainly encouraged, and we meet year-round. My name and address there. If you have any comments after the fact, please send me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay.
Good job. Thank you.
Thorough and detailed, as always. Any questions from the Select Board or anybody else tonight for CPC or Jay?
Just quickly, we talked about, I think, 13 million in benefit, yet early on, I think you mentioned 9.5 million. What's the difference? Is that bonded bonded stuff? or-
No, 9.5 went to town organizations. 13 was the total in grants.
Okay. Okay, I thought the 9.5 was the total we've gotten
No.
since inception, okay. In that big bucket of administration, I know you need to look at it, but why would something go into that bucket to begin with versus unreserved?
The only way money gets into the administration bucket is each year at town meeting, and it's covered because it's on the consent agenda, so it doesn't show up. We transfer 5% of our total revenues. This past year, it would have been 35K, because we got around 700. So each year, we transfer around 35K from the unreserved into the administration. So how it got to be where it is, with only putting 30K a year in, I suspect a clerical error somewhere. And it's still ours, and it's not committed anywhere. We can't use it for grants, so we really need to move it back into the unreserved, so we use it for grants. And hopefully, we can do this by a committee vote, but if not, we'll wait till next spring at town meeting and vote it there. We'll ask Tom McEnany what he thinks.
And lastly, sorry, you
go
know, you had
ahead.
ABC for your pipeline, that's great, like it. You had the 4 or so million for town hall, that's not in there, is that somewhere above?
That's committed. The
So it's
4 million
committed, so
is,
it's in there.
it's been approved at town meeting.
Yeah, we've encumbered it, so it's
But
just
not the
waiting
heating
to,
system.
not the heating system, right?
It's in our virtual escrow account.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't show up because we're not spending any money, but I keep looking at it because I know when town hall does get approved and we move forward and the finance department goes to take out the bond, we will have to start paying the repayment. So when I look at any grants we have or any other expenses, I gotta make sure that there's enough money to make those bond repayments.
Gotcha.
So when we analyze where we are, that's what we do.
So it's committed, and that 4.5 was specific enough in that the heating system couldn't be added to some cooling or HVAC system line item that's out there?
They approved a bottom line dollar amount for the project.
Could,
but
it just
we're-
doesn't
we're
fit.
in looking to find ways to afford the project, that
Gotcha.
was, but we may have a solution for that you
Cool.
hear about
Yeah,
later.
I understand there may be solutions. That was just my pessimism.
I was kind of
Right.
putting the ball in the
To make me
sea.
to ask. So when it comes up, we can say, okay, what are we doing? Do we have to worry about this building for another grant moving forward? I don't know.
So I had a question, you had made a comment that you can only use the surcharge to pay the bond. Is that the interest of the bond or the principal of the bond?
Both.
Both.
Both. So once you have a debt, you can't use
You can't use
match,
that.
so
yeah.
you have to
And
find, you have to
and
figure out
once we
before,
add
okay.
on the town hall debt to the
Yeah.
existing Sagamore Hill debt,
Yeah.
we're not gonna bond anything for a while.
We're pretty
To
much maxed on our
2032.
Yeah.
But in your unreserved or your administrative, there's no surcharge or piece in there where you could? You probably don't want to with the way interest rates are going, but I'm just
Well,
wondering.
yeah, in the unreserved, there is surcharge monies in there.
So if you wanted to, and somebody looks at that, right? I mean,
Well, it turns out the way the when the bond payment comes up in that year, you look at the surcharge income in that year, and you can only use some monies
Gotcha.
in that surcharge account
Okay.
from the amount of surcharge you take in, so.
Well, lastly, thank you. You guys do great work.
I mean, the only, last question I had was, every time you talk about the 2 versus 3%, you always sell me on the 3%, but but I know it's a big deal to get there, but it's a big process to get the town to go from 2 to 3, right? It's multiple
Well, and
votes, or?
Yeah, if you look back at the Wenham slide, they made just pretty close to what we made, within, I think, $50,000. But
Yep.
they're like half the size of us. And that difference is, I think they got another 140-some thousand in the second and third round.
Yeah.
And
Look
we,
at the balance
we
we've
would
got in
almost,
reserve
we would
without
almost,
using it
we
to
would
that degree,
probably,
3% right now.
and Jay can correct me, we'd come close to almost doubling what we
Yeah,
get
we
annually.
would.
Right.
We'd be,
if We went to 3%.
we'd be looking at $1 million and, but it would take 2+ years to make it happen through the series of votes and the timing required to count revenues and stuff. And as I've told Joe on several occasions, the CPC would certainly support that
Yeah.
idea. But it's, probably needs to be some sort of a citizen's petition to make it happen.
Gotcha.
I think it does, because the CPC was a citizen's petition to begin with, so any changes to it have to be a citizen's petition as well.
Interesting.
At least that's my understanding.
Well, thank you, Jay, that was great.
Yeah, really good.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Michelle, for coming and sitting. If there's nothing else for Jay,
Welcome to stay.
yeah, you're welcome to stay. Jay, if you want to adjourn your meeting, you're more than welcome to.
Okay?
Thanks, Jay. Good job.
And you can stay sitting up here, or you can leave, or
I might
Stick
stay
around,
for a
it's
little
up to
bit. All right, let me do,
welcome.
can I have a motion to adjourn from somebody from the CPC?
I so move.
Okay, second? Okay, let's do a roll call to adjourn. I agree. Kim, yes?
Yes.
Michelle, yes? Sean?
Yes.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have on the Select Board agenda, approve assets limit for the fiscal year '24 Chapter 91 senior exemption. This is kind of an annual thing for us. We're increasing, I think, about $6,000 or $7,000 on it.
Yeah. So it's, annually, you have to approve the limits for the Chapter 91 Special Senior Exemption Program. We haven't done it yet for this year, and in order for the assessors to move forward with the program, we need to have those limits set. They're recommending an increase in the single-person household assets allowable from 66,814 to 71,156. I'll put it up on the screen for everybody to see. And for married couples, from 91,620 to 97,575.
Any questions? I mean, this is just something we kind of increase every year to help our senior exemption, our senior population cope a little bit with the taxes and increases in inflation.
What rolls into total household assets?
That's a good question, Joe. Do you remember what it is?
I think it's all, whatever they have in their bank accounts and whatever income they have.
Questions? I'd entertain a motion if there's no more questions.
I move that we increase the total household asset exemption, senior exemption act for FY 2024 and beyond.
Second.
Second by Caroline, did you second?
I did second.
Okay, good. I couldn't quite tell.
I also made the fingers.
Oh, this is the second, this is it, okay.
Peace out.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great, awesome. All right, then we have, up next, approve appointment of Lee McCoy to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2026. In the packets, there's a letter from Lauren Lynch on the Conservation Commission endorsing Mr. McCoy,
As well as his application.
as well as his application, correct.
Is Mr. McCoy here?
Any questions for Mr. McCoy, or at Mr. McCoy, or about Mr. McCoy? Yeah?
Does he want to join the CPC?
You can't poach, Jay.
You should ask
No
him, Jay.
poaching zone.
Sandy's on it.
All right, does anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve the appointment of Lee McCoy to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2026.
All right,
Second.
any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Where are we here? Next is approve appointment of alternate zoning board of appeals members, Andy Phillip and Stephen, when I butcher his last name, I apologize. DeRocher, that's what I was gonna guess. To be full members and approve appointment of ZBA member David Parenchief as an alternate member.
You also have an email from Patrick Greffett on behalf of the chair of,
Yep.
the proposed chair of the ZBA.
Any comments or questions or a motion?
I move to approve the appointment of alternate zoning board of appeals members Andy Phillip and Stephen DeRocher to be full members and approve appointment of ZBA member David Parenchief as an alternate member.
All right,
All said.
a second by Bill?
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, another unanimous vote, thank you. All right, moving right along, we have approve a plan for a local Hamilton Wenham Fall Festival. On Sunday, September 17th, 2023, we have Shelby Thompson with us tonight on behalf of Shop Local Hamilton Wenham. Hi, Shelby.
Hi everyone. I'm here tonight to talk about the Fall Festival, which we've had the last few years. We don't intend to change the plan much. We're just really excited to have this event again. While he gets that going, I will tell you that I'm representing local HW, part of the Hamilton Development Corp, I believe. And they hired me to help put the event together and get all the permissions and everything, which is why I'm here tonight. You can go down a couple of slides to the.
Well, you've got it there, but I don't have it up on the screen yet. Hold on. Trying
That's
to get-
okay. So the Fall Festival is a great opportunity for local business owners to increase their visibility. It's a great community event.
It's in Mass. Excellent. Go ahead.
And the
Apologize.
date is going to be Sunday, September 17th, from 12 to 5 p.m., which is the same day and time frame we had last year. And we're estimating about 1,500 attendees. This event is a great, like I said, a great chance for the businesses to increase their visibility. It's a great community event, and it promotes community relationships. So we definitely are really excited about this opportunity. Like last year, we are looking to have music. The Hamilton Wenham Mothers Club are going to sponsor a puppeteer, which is going to be great. We'll have beer and wine in a closed-off beer garden. We'll have several food trucks and food tents. And, of course, we'll have all the different businesses involved. So this year, we wanted to expand a little bit to 300 Main. So you'll see on this fire and police recommendation that I added a star that we're going to have an officer at the crosswalk on 1A.
Good
Otherwise, it will be the same as last year where the vehicles block off the road at 1A and Railroad and Willow and Railroad. So we'll hire that detail for the crosswalk. And we've been in touch with police and fire about this plan, and they are in agreement with it. We'll also have all the signage necessary at the beer garden so the beer doesn't leave and everyone will be ID'd to enter the beer garden. And then the next slide just gives an overview of the map of the festival and how we're incorporating and trying to promote and encourage the attendees to go to the shops at 300 Main. We're also hoping that Treat will have opened up on the Willow Street Flats. So we might expand a little bit more and change to cone off Willow Street with a soft close. So cars could be turned down Rust or down Pleasant. And in hopes that we can encourage more foot traffic across Willow Street to Houndstooth. So that there would just be a soft close. So I'm here tonight to ask permission to close off Railroad Avenue between 1A and Willow Street. And also, I'm asking for approval of a one-day liquor license for Essex County Brewing and the Cellar Door to offer alcohol in a secured and gated beer garden in the Willow Railroad Ave parking lot. I'm also asking you all to champion the event. Do you have any questions about the event?
Do we have the liquor license?
They
Application? Is that on
don't
there?
have the applications yet. The,
Okay.
So actually, the applications come in directly from them,
Good, okay.
and then we will approve them when we have that information.
based on current policy, you've authorized me to sign those if they're all is in order. So once we get them, we'll review and make sure that they're in order, and the correct insurances are in place, and
So we can, and tonight we can include that in the motion, as long as everything's copacetic, we can have Joe sign it.
Well, the one question I was gonna ask about crossing 1A, and I'm glad, I think the first year you crossed 1A, last year you didn't, I think this year, I'm glad that you're sort of expanding a little bit more, I think that's a good move.
Thank you.
Is there a reason why you don't wanna close Willow? Are you trying just to, you're saying maybe a soft close? I mean, why not just ask for it all and just have the festival get bigger?
I think they're just, want to be considerate of all the residents back there, because Willow is very highly trafficked, since I live around the corner, I would say that.
Shelby and I are neighbors, across the street, literally.
But I think that's why. And plus, people will park down Willow, so we want to allow, that's some parking as well.
So I would maybe suggest that whoever makes a motion tonight incorporates as long as everything's fine with the liquor license, that Joe approves it, and that also we approve a soft close on Willow if needed.
Yeah.
That way we don't have to change anything when it comes closer to the event.
Was it on a Saturday one year and we moved it to a Sunday, or was it always on a Sunday?
So last year, as my first year planning this, they just guessed Saturday and then forgot that the post office, the vet, everything's open on Saturday. So we realized we have to do this on a Sunday. So it was promoted on a Saturday for like 2 months
I vaguely
before we
remember
realized
that.
the error.
Yeah.
And then for the 300 Main Street, will there be vendors in that parking lot?
Our plan is just to have the businesses open and not have the tents and keep all the vendors who are just doing pop-up tents on Railroad Ave.
How come?
And I think just to keep the simplicity of the space.
Okay.
Open to ideas, though.
No, somebody was talking about it last year. They're like, you wouldn't even have to close off a street if you just did this whole thing in the parking lot of 300.
Yeah.
Because it's so big. And I just wondered if that had ever come up, that you could have the whole festival in the parking lot of 300 Main.
I don't know, it's a great
But-
suggestion.
But I don't mind closing Railroad. I just didn't know if that ever came up.
Definitely will do Railroad, but I'll talk to the group about 300 Main.
I think the idea is to go in the stores on Railroad Ave. as well,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Right.
But the idea is to go to the stores on 300 Main, too.
Yeah, right, I agree with you. I mean, if there's a way to draw it over, even if it's signage or tents or something to make it look inviting, that would be a plus.
That's our hope.
Right, and I'm glad we're crossing the street, too, so.
As long as there's a police officer there.
And the
Yep.
police just asked that we did not have any beer, crossing the street, we are not doing that.
Just have it be a free-for-all. That's great.
All right, so we need to make a motion, and we can discuss further, but
Is there any discussion?
I think
Further
it's
I'll
a
make,
great idea. Let's
I'll make a
forward
motion that
Unless
we,
the pop-up park will be ready by then.
what's the date of this thing?
Sunday, September 17th.
I make a motion on Sunday, September 17th, we give permission to close off Railroad Avenue between 1A and Willow Street and give a permission to soft close Willow Street. Approval of a one-day liquor license pending the complete application by Essex County Brewery and Cellar Door. And I think that's it.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate it. All right, up next, we have review proposed plan for town hall renovations with net zero carbon goals. Bill Garbati of ESG and Energy Manager Vicky Masone. Hello.
Hello there. Hello, everyone. How exciting to come right after a fall festival approval, right? Who loves a fall festival? So, thank you. Energy Systems Group is really honored to be, hopefully be part of this opportunity with the historic town hall. I've been working with Joe and Tim. Thank you for coming, Tim, and Vicky, for several months, talking about how we might look at this project more comprehensively. And I know in the past, there's been some issues around, like the safety complex, maybe you didn't get all that you wanted out the gate, and even here with the contemplation of maybe some money down the road for HVAC, and why not look at this more comprehensively at first and take care of it all at once. I just want to acknowledge some folks on our team that are here with me today. So our lead engineer in Massachusetts here is Kristen Michelle. On the phone with me is Ed Daly, who's our leader of the Northeast.
Hi, Ed.
Hello, good evening all. Thank you for allowing us.
And our head of construction, as this is a construction project, Steve Richmond, is on the phone as well for support.
Hi, Steve.
Evening.
Next slide. So we sat with the team here. Obviously the goal is I think first and foremost, as it always has been, to maintain the historic presence of the town hall. And we'll be working with LLB on their designs, but looking to redesign the energy systems. We're seeing a lot of your residents and the communities locally here are looking toward climate issues, and decarbonization is a big topic. And there's a lot of local and state and federal grants that support this, and the goal toward net zero. So we want to incorporate those, and there's some actually exciting opportunities the way the property sits, front-facing but rear with Public Works here, and having to put some of that there that is sort of all hidden from the basic historic nature. We want to leverage operational and maintenance savings. In fact, Christian has history here working with Vicky on prior energy projects here at the town hall and with Hamilton and towns like Swampscott. It's a partnership approach where we then can work with the subcontractors that will help make the project a success, from having the right classifications around historic designations if needed for carpentry work and such. And it's a real win as you go to town hall, to not only get the project approved with obviously the CPC money that's really supporting this project, but it being a net zero project. Next slide. So our approach to these more comprehensive projects, and some of this work has already been done now, is to start with feasibility study, look at the capital improvement plans, your energy-related goals, Obviously, here we have architectural plans that have been in place for some time, and enter into a development agreement that takes about 2 to 3 months to develop the project, really wring out the numbers on these alternate options. We're looking at geothermal system with some additional solar to support a net zero project. We work with the team here on developing that baseline scope and then the funding build-up to address it, and then going into town meeting, having final costing, and potentially subcontractor, just depending on where we want to be on that approval before or after. Once approved, obviously, we execute contract and begin a project implementation, and then commission and show performance. And we really want to have a big community outreach component to this as well, because that'll be an important, I mean, this is your showcase, this is your leading by example here, and we want to be able to have the community support the project. If I look at the funding buildup on the next slide, again, this is estimate because we're starting the process to really refine these numbers. About an $8.5 million project. We got the CPC grants, $4.5 million. Joe could talk about the free cash budget. Additionally, there's utility rebates, mass save programs for this HVAC and lighting. What's changed too is the federal grants, really. So there's multiple grants there. There's the investment tax credits that now come as direct pay grants to municipalities, so that you don't have to monetize those to a third party who could use that tax credit. It basically comes in the form of a grant, and that would be applicable to solar, geothermal, those renewable energy systems. Green Communities now is starting to do, even though you've been a past recipient of these, they're starting to give fairly large one-time grants for decarbonization projects, and we're going to be working with Vicki to submit. We're submitting tomorrow, actually, with Vicki for Buildings Up, which is a federal program addressing decarbonization and going to show how we could, this could be a showcase for other historic community town hall projects. And then introducing the concept, I know bonding was talked about a little earlier, tax-exempt lease purchase agreement. Acts similar to a bond. It's really for energy infrastructure projects. Similar interest rates, has non-appropriation language in there as well, so that it really is funding that out of existing operating budget. So you're not bonding for new tax revenue. You're just you're managing your existing operating budgets. Any questions on that? Schedule. So here we are presenting to you and hopefully have your support to move forward, answer questions as you go along the way, can always come back. We are going to be speaking with additional committees, the finance and the capital budget committees, as part of the community engagement over the next couple months while we're developing the project. And our target has been to be ready by October 4th, so that we have a package that can go on the warrant. That's tied to your support for the CPC vote for those funds on November 4th. And then hopefully shortly after that, we can execute an agreement and move forward with the construction, which could take about 18 months, just depending on what some of the final things are. And I know the team's already talking about swing space and trying to figure those things out. Just some savings at a glance, and we're going to try to expand on this because as part of it, we want to look additionally at, and the town has done a great job with some of the other facilities, but there's always some opportunity, and we're going to be looking for those things that we might be able to grab some savings over at the safety complex. I know we're going to look at some of that and maybe even address some of the challenges with humidity and some of the HVAC over there. But these are just some of the rough economics that the project will tout in terms of the net zero path specifically for Town Hall here.
So I should ask it before, that, you mentioned that the $1 million Buildings Up, would that go into a category if you got that up above part of the 8.5, or is that?
Yeah, so that could swap out depending. So with the Buildings Up, the initial grant is $200,000, and then there's additional grant opportunity for further implementation. So depending on the success of that, it could fill the gap. We would probably ask for it all to complete the project, so it would be fully grant funded. But it would be good to have a backup and leverage its help if possible, so that you get the project you want.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And do we tie in any of the charging stations, things like that, as we talk about, you know, net zero and all that? I mean, in this platform or this footprint or even downtown?
I mean, I don't, how do you mean, do we tie in with the charging station?
I mean, is that part of the, anything on the project to extend it, or, I mean, it's savings, right? We're trying to, you know, we have a net zero goal as well. I mean, is there, it kind of is the same talk track, or?
So we are looking at additional solar projects that are gonna help, and we've currently, our existing solar project is providing a lot of power that we can use to power this building. If we can get off of, you know, natural gas heating, we can run a lot of that through there, and then Vicki can answer some questions. I know she's looking at proposing some solar for the new roof in the garage, on the DBW garage, as well as possibly on the police station in the future. So those, again, are sources of electricity that would be able to take us off of the grid a little bit.
I'm trying to understand the design build, which I'm a favor of design build. I'm trying to understand how the design build approach works with municipal finance and with LLB and all that stuff. So can you talk about what you actually design build and how that works?
Yeah, so it's different than the plan spec where you know, you're gonna go, you spend some money with an architect and then they have a spec that you go out and you bid. And, you know, we all know some of the challenges around that with low bid and things like that and getting what you want. This is a collaborative effort where we design as we go together and get the costing. So it's not a 1-2 step, it's a coordinated step. And so we'll be selecting subcontractors. We can go out to bid for subcontractors underneath that, depending on how the dollar amount from each of those categories, and build the project together as the grant money's coming and the costs are coming in. We build that project and then implement it once it's baked.
But that meets all the procurement requirements to do design, that's what I was trying to figure out, do design build.
We're working on confirming that now. We,
Say that might be a hitch.
well, it's a gray area. I'll
Right.
put it that way. It's a gray area.
I'm in
So
favor
we're-
of design build, I do it all the time, I just
No.
always curious how you navigate the competitive bidding. And do you guys, when you do design build, is it all in-house, or do you use vendors for that? Does ESG have your own designers and builders, or do you hire partners for that?
So we have, basically, we're project developers and construction managers. We have a lot of in-house engineering talent.
Okay.
We will supplement that. We do anticipate using LLB architects. They've done a lot of the work so far, so we anticipate they would be under the team as part of that. And then as far as rolling trucks, that would be the collaborative effort to work to bid those out, either to get 3 bids or to, you know, if you have contractors that have you know, proven themselves and you want to use, or other goals around small business, enterprise, maybe WIMBY, those types of things.
Other questions?
The key part of this proposal is really just to make sure that we can try to get the whole package of improvements and renovations for the town hall. Understanding the town meeting's desire and the town residents' desire for us to move towards a net zero direction. We started talking with ESG about those things, and we are not at this point ready to say what exactly the relationship's gonna be, but we think that we can get the whole project done with ESG's help, whether that puts them in the primary seat or in a sub-role, or if it's 2 separate projects, the energy improvements being done by
Right.
ESG and traditional contracting to do the rest. We'll be determining that in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
But we know that we can use this to get the HVAC stuff, the energy stuff that we wanted to get done that we weren't able to afford originally,
And so.
with the money we already have.
Yeah, and so I know, Tim and you and I, we've talked about solar on the DPW garage and possibly a public safety building, then a little while ago, we talked about geothermal, and talked about doing some kind of testing of the area to see if it's good for geothermal. How often, like, what's the percentage that geothermal's a go, a no-go? Does it
So I
look
will turn
probable?
to Christian for that. I know that we're about kind of thinking about the soil sampling that we need to do back there to get that determined, but.
It's more about
If you
drilling
could,
down,
if,
it's more about drilling down that far than it's
exactly,
anything else, right?
right? If you talk, just wouldn't mind coming up here, so, because there's folks at home and on Zoom that can listen. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes less of can we do it? It becomes more of is it cost effective to do
Right,
it?
right,
Because I mean, we could do anything, but it's
right.
like,
You can drill
are
deep
there-
enough. It's,
Are there enough grants and is there enough savings to support? Does it all work together,
Gotcha.
basically? So
all right, that makes sense.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that did.
yeah.
It did.
It
we
definitely,
don't want to
it
be cost
definitely will
prohibitive.
work. It definitely will
It
work.
will work, but is it
It's how much-
cost prohibitive?
Yeah, how much it
right?
costs to get there, right?
Right.
And then how do we engage, I mean, it's obviously that we've engaged the firm, but how is that, is it a handshake deal right now, or is it a contract needs to be signed? or what-
I signed a contract for project development.
Okay.
That, you know, as long as we come to an agreement that, you know, that becomes part of the development of the project becomes part of the overall cost. And if not, and something causes us to part ways, then there's a little bit of a cost to the town.
Right. And how many projects have you guys done in Massachusetts? I mean, I see you've done projects all over the country, but how many in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so I know, Christian, like I said, has been part of the projects here in the past, and worked with Vicky over at Swampscott. And I've personally been involved with projects at Wayland, Methuen, Fall River, Lawrence.
So a number of projects.
Number of projects, and then we're wrapping up a project for New Hampshire up at Concord, and that includes their Supreme Court, which is on the National Registry. And we're wrapping up a project in New Milford where the town hall was part of the project. It wasn't completely like what we're doing here, but it was part of the project, and it's historic as well.
I'm looking at your schedule here from a couple slides ago. And you're meeting with us today, I can see that in the schedule. It said you met with the HEIC and the CAT. Did you get much feedback from that? Did you meet with them?
I'm gonna
How
have
did that go?
Vicky speak with that, because I think Vicky took care of that.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi, good evening. So I have presented the idea conceptually. It's really still a conceptual idea of how to finance it and build this type of net zero project. So I have presented it to HEIC. Don Perkins from HEIC is here. And there's a lot of cross-pollination between them and the Hamilton Wenham Climate Action Team. So I've brought it to them too. Again, conceptually, and again, asking for their input on the grant applications, because they're always offering, can we help, you know, beef up your application? So they did review the buildings up and provided a few comments. So
Okay, good.
they've been a good support so far.
All right. Any other questions? Do we feel this is a good thing to keep on keeping on?
Yeah, and it sounds like this is what we need, somebody to guide us through the process who's done it before.
Right, and I think, you know, having the building is energy efficient and, you know, get it LEED certified or net zero, whatever our goal is, would be really great, and be able to do it with grants would be amazing, because then we can do that upgrade that we really crucially need for the town hall renovation.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't know if there's anything more, Joe, on the free cash piece of it, or any concerns
Well,
with any certifications or amounts in there, and
I think, you know, we understand that the special town meeting in November is going to address the free cash appropriation, that you'll talk about a little bit tonight when you open the warrant, a little bit later on. And, you know, we know what we can afford for the 2 million of free cash and the 4.5 million for CPC grants. Unfortunately, it leaves this part of the project out. So we want to just keep pursuing this. Like I said, we'll better define exactly what the relationship is going to be and how it's going to work, but we're very optimistic. And given that we're making, you know, a once in every 100 years major renovation of this building, it probably makes sense that energy-wise, the building works for the next 100 years as well, so.
And our two members joining us via Zoom from ESG, do you guys have any comments or anything for the board?
Thank you for the ask. Only to offer the one component relative to the design build is the departure of us and our contracting team. Behind Steve Richmond and our development team, we bring a focused effort on the performance, not just the energy that is achieved, but also that this project performs as designed for the community. And that was one thing I wanted to stress for my office. Thank you for the invite tonight.
Thank you. Heather?
Nothing further for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was briefly contacted by the Environmental Impact Committee, who was also doing a study. I just was curious, is that feeding into this conversation? Because I had to provide them a lot of information. I just was curious.
We have members.
Vicki, did HEIC take a vote on whether they supported this proposal or not? I know that you've shared the ideas with them. They were generally supportive, but they didn't vote one way or the other. All right. I mean, we'd asked HEIC to take a look at it and make, you know, make a recommendation, so seems like they didn't vote, but at least they seem supportive. We're grateful for that. I'm assuming, Heather, whatever you provided them was helpful to them in that
I
regard.
mean, Dawn's here.
Curious as to they can produce a final report or anything like that.
Do you want to add anything?
No?
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
No, you go ahead.
Don Perkins, HEIC. We talked about it at a very high level. It was just a concept. We all on the committee support it, think it's a great idea. The goal of the town is net zero. I mean, we have net zero goals. This would be a big step, a big opportunity for the town to show that it's on the forefront of moving that way.
Right. Thank you, Don. All right, I think we're all in support of it, and keep on keeping on, and Joe, just keep us abreast.
You're looking for a go, no-go, right? So, is that from the board? That's sort of the goal?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great, no, I mean, I definitely want to make sure we, under-promise and over-deliver type of thing. I don't want to promise, it's hard, I don't want to go shoot too high and then not get there, so it's sort of, I want to make sure we do a stepped and measured approach, but as long as we sort of, under-promise, over-deliver, I think that's all right.
So maybe a motion to authorize Joe to continue to moving forward with ESG and seeing what we can do to work on improvements for town hall's net zero goal.
It's like, how far, yeah, okay. I was just gonna ask, like, I mean, obviously the idea is to gild the lily when we're talking about it in this way, but like, we don't even have the impact, or the budget to make the type of impact on this building that we would need to make. When you say like once every 100 years, I'm like, we're not even scratching the surface of what you'd have to do to this building to make it an energy efficient building into the next 30 years, let alone the next 100 years. So like, what is the sort of long-term reinvestment? Because I think when I look at this, there's a lot of cheerleading and I love that, but like when I think about the fact that this building is how old it is and we can't touch a lot of the things that are ultimately causing some of our energy inefficiencies, like where are those gaps and how quickly do we feel that we can like continue to build upon this work so we don't have a sieve?
Yeah, so back to the funding strategy buildup, we feel like the grant support, HVAC is the biggest component to the electrification, right? And so if you want to, a lot of folks are saying, we'll decarbonize, net zero might be the next stretch, but if you want to kind of take it in like under promise, over deliver, call it a decarbonization project, we know we can electrify this building. If it can't be geothermal, maybe it'll probably be variable refrigerant flow systems. So then you're decarbonized, no gas burning on site, no scope 1 emissions. Taking it to net zero needs a little bit more work and such, but there's so much grant money around supporting all those elements. We feel that we could find the money within those categories to do it. And that's our commitment, to come back in the next 2 or 3 months by the target date and show you the plan and those costs that will get you there.
Have we had any kind of general energy audit for town hall or any other town building assets that
I think we do.
that we work towards grants for?
That's got to be part of the Green Communities, our annual Green Communities
Right.
reporting, so.
Yeah, it's old, I'd say, and that here is old from when Green Communities was first designated in '09, but that's part of what ESG would do, is like investment grading audit.
That's correct. And that's part of the development, is to re-look at that with today's numbers and situation, given the changes that are contemplated.
Gotcha, some
anyway
things
for
are still the
compliance.
same, so you just got to update the cost of them.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, would there be another facility that you'd want to put that money into that would yield a better return? I know the timing's right for this, right, to throw that in, but would the public safety building make more sense? Or what draws more electricity, or, where would you get a better return if you put this, this type of an investment into a program? Is this the right place? Or is it just timely because?
I mean, public safety does draw more energy, but it's a newer building, and so it's hard, I think there's things we can look at and do over there, and there are some things that are happening too that Vicky's already started. So I think the real opportunity, just because you're going to be, doing so much work here, it would be a missed opportunity to try to come back later and retrofit that stuff. I just think it might look a lot nicer and be the right time to do it here. So.
Yeah, I would move that we continued support of the program and authorize Joe to work with ESG and further bringing us down this timeline and path for the schedule that I'm looking at, I guess.
Perfect.
One thing, you mentioned lead at some point, I'm not sure you just mentioned it because you just mentioned it because it's a requirement. It's not a requirement.
Not a requirement.
Okay. Because it
You-
seems,
You're always kind of striving
it seems to always
for-
be like that. A lot of times that's more of an administrative and a financial,
Mhm.
investment that doesn't pay off because it's sort of to get a checkbox and a plaque on the wall. But there's
Yeah,
things you
July,
could
yeah.
spend your money on better to actually get more savings because it doesn't actually reward you for savings. It sort of just rewards you for doing things.
For
that-
just- Yeah, I know what you mean.
But you reuse a door versus buy a new door. You get no credit for a reason door. You get credit for buying a new FSC
Right,
door.
right,
So it's
right.
like, so you throw a door away and you to get more points, right? So
Some of it doesn't make sense.
so I just want to make sure we don't have to go down that road to actually to do this. So
That wasn't contemplated.
good. All right, thank you.
All right,
And
so
no, yeah.
Bill made a motion.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir.
Yes, she thanks you.
Approved, thanks.
And thank you, gentlemen, for joining us online tonight. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim, thanks, Vicki.
All right, up next, we have approved funding for master plan implementation phase with proposed funding source from ARPA of $31,500. Was it something I said? Just kidding. Have a good night.
You have a proposal from Barrett Group, Barrett Planning Group, which is our consultant on the master plan process, and you have the chair of the master plan steering committee here, who are in support of the request. We have also in your packets information accounting for what we have available in ARPA funds. At this point, we have roughly $672,000 that hasn't been encumbered. And so the recommendation from the town manager, myself, is to take this money from ARPA and keep the momentum going on the master plan steering committee.
I concur, but Bill, give us the
Yeah, I'd just add
details.
that, as you know, we've got a current scope of work that draws us through kind of assessing all the inventory assessment of everything throughout Hamilton. We've completed that. We're currently working on the vision and goals and key issues part of the project, and that's fully funded and supported by this committee. I think the ask here tonight for the additional funding would add scope and really an implementation plan, so it doesn't become a binder on a shelf. Between now and this would draw us out through November, would be keeping Barrett on board, the master steering committee in play, and working on a recommendation for an implementation plan, meeting with town staff. A lot of that will be Judy and team and town staff, but the committee will still continue to meet. But I highly recommend, we kind of bring this over the finish line by creating an implementation plan, buttoning this thing up, and then ultimately at the end, sometime in November, doing a public meeting and presentation on the final product.
What comes out of the implementation plan? This is like
Uh,
policy, bylaw, like all that granular stuff?
Yep, exactly. It'll be draft recommendations, that, I know, Joe, you put it in here somewhere, but it's really, they'll meet with each of the department heads and Joe and team, and then they'll come up with, kind of procedurally how they will implement that as situations, come across their departments. And they'll utilize the master plan and kind of the wishes of the community.
It also gives the administration, the paid administration, kind of a roadmap of what to do over the next several years to see that the goals of the master plan are carried out. And it gives us something to refer to when we say, go to town meeting and ask for money to implement something, or we go to town meeting and ask for a policy change, or the board of selectmen, or select board, sorry, to ask for policy change. We have some reason that the community has spoken about this, the community has decided this is the direction they want to go in through the master plan process, and that's why we're proposing it, so.
And it really,
Do you have a presentation of it to the select board and I missed it?
of,
The master plan?
It's not complete.
Oh, okay.
we've not had that yet, no.
But they're planning to wrap up in August. So the idea was to keep the momentum going with
Keep Barrett in play.
with
so-
most of the,
We could come in sometime in August, later August, and come in through through key issues and what the community has said, and then kind of give a preview of what's
I mean, how do I know if I want you to implement it if I don't like it?
Well, I will say that the implementation was part of the original scope with obviously all the kind of change orders that you've had along the way. We've hit some bumps, but
Yeah.
this really takes it from a static document to a working kind of plan. And I think that's really needed because the worst thing we want to do is spend all this money on a master plan and then have it just sit on the shelf and not really use it as guidance and next steps. And that's my worry if we don't bring it to the finish line here.
I think the timing, Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the timing though is asking for it now, right before the master plan document is finished, is that we have some momentum with the current members of the Master Plan Steering Committee, and in order to keep them and the consultant engaged before she gets booked doing other work in other places, we would like to, get her under contract to take the next step.
Correct.
Any other thoughts before someone makes a motion?
Right, so I was reading the thing, it's not just, there's actually, it's not just implementation, but that's part of it. It's like, they're
Right.
gonna find steps 5, 6, and 7, right, which involves all the stuff you talked about, but,
5 is really, I think, part of scope 1, but there's
Yeah.
some additional stuff that got carried over. To Sean's point, when we changed consultants, I think, there were some monies that were spent in duplication, so now we're really to continue that and bring it through fruition and add the implementation and then really the completion bucket below. But ideally, I think the big part, in my opinion, is the recommendation and implementation plan. We're working key issues right now.
okay.
All right, anybody want to make a motion? And before you make a motion, I mean, I guess there's maybe kind of two parts to it. We're talking about continuing the plan to kind of fruition here, but also fine with using ARPA money for it.
Right. Yeah, make a motion that we approve $31,500 in ARPA funds to fund the master plan implementation phase.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then, Joe, that leaves us with about, what, 640,000 after that?
Yeah, 640 and change.
Is that after the select board trip?
After our Aruba
Team building.
vacation,
Asking for a friend.
team building.
Yeah.
Well, we shouldn't take our private yacht because it may get defaced. That's what the latest
Could we go on your boat?
eco-terrorists are doing,
make it-
defacing yachts and
How many can you fit on your boat?
Ibiza or something like that.
We'll bring a paddle.
Bring my paddle boat, yeah. Just while we're kind of talking about ARPA, is there anything on the horizon that you see, Joe, that would be an ARPA-funded thing?
Well, so, the one thought that we had internally was, in addition to the next request, is that you have a recently completed master plan for Patton Park. And it's an expensive plan, but there are a lot of smaller items that you could hit and take off of that. Most of the ARPA money the town has spent so far has been dedicated to, really has been dedicated to infrastructure. Necessary infrastructure, it was a good use of the funds. I'd argue it all day that it's a good use of funds to avoid having to hit ratepayers with big increases to be able to afford the things that the town was able to purchase with the ARPA funds. But very little of that has like real tangible, impact on people on a day-to-day. So, I would,
Some Patton Park improvements might
might be
go
something that we-
visually well for
Restroom improvements.
restroom or benches or trees
Restroom, benches,
or pathways.
pathways, things,
That's a
all-
big one. The
little
connectivity
pieces
is a
of,
big
little
thing.
pieces of that, and we don't have to do it all at one time, but you can start to do pieces of it, and that would make a real visible benefit to the community that people would appreciate.
And the big impact of the master plan was moving the tank, because it made the most sense to sort of, it aligned the fields, it gave an area for a little bathroom, snack bar, I think could go. But so is that really how far do we take that down the road to make sure that
Well, I
we
think-
could actually do that?
I think one of the things that we could do is, put together a task force. I would hesitate to call it another committee. We're having trouble getting
Right.
committee members, but a few of the people, one or two of the people that were part of the Patton Park Master Plan process, along with Sean and Tim, although I hate to put any more on Tim's plate right now, but to just, and maybe a representative of this board, to kind of start talking about what parts of the Patton Park Master Plan might make the most sense, and then we can come back with a proposal in the fall.
Right, and I think even a phased approach to different things, because it is a really
It's phased, but
comprehensive and
the
expensive
first
plan.
piece of that, if it's gonna go the right direction, is
Right.
relocating the tank. Because I think it made sense, right? The plan
I
made a
think
lot of sense doing that.
I think the plan that they put together is really stellar. I mean,
Right.
I've used the
hinges on
parks
that
for the
one piece, but I
20-plus
don't know
years
if
I've
that
lived
affect-
here, but I've never realized that it could be improved that
Who do we
dramatically
offend by
by...
moving the tank? I don't know if we offend anybody by doing it, but just note, we get some feedback on that.
True.
Because it was a big part of it and it made sense, but I don't know what,
Yeah.
I don't know what the negative downside of that is.
There's no time limitations on the 600 and plus thousand?
We've got until, 2 federal fiscal years, we got till well into 2025. before
So we got a little bit of time, but not a huge window.
And
But it sits in our account.
It's in our account.
It's in our
already
account.
received it. It's in,
We've got it, it's just there.
We'll spend it.
the money's in the bank.
Okay.
Any more public health-related issues?
You have one, right? I mean, the next thing we're voting on is Patton
Is the
Park.
patent,
Improvement.
well, it's
Patton
not-
Homestead.
Patton Homestead, not
Oh,
Patton Park.
Patton Homestead, sorry.
Right, I mean, public health.
We're not anticipating it, for all intents and purposes, all public health related expenses to the pandemic are over.
Right.
I am engaged in conversations with some of the other town managers from the former Greater Cape Ann vaccination clinics that we were doing, the GCAC vaccination clinics that we were doing, about trying to continue some kind of a partnership, but it wouldn't need an influx of dollars from ARPA.
Got it. Good thinking.
And that would just be to take what we were doing with COVID vaccine and extrapolating it out over other necessary vaccines, so shingles vaccine potentially, flu vaccines, pooling our resources and doing
that
them
all
together
together.
so that we can be more impactful with those dollars.
Yeah. That's all
It
good, that
wouldn't
makes
need-
good sense to me.
It wouldn't need any additional funding, so.
All right, next item is approve a plan to provide a partial match for funding to the MCC Cultural Facilities Grant for Pavilion at Patton Homestead with proposed funding source, again, ARPA, in the amount of $50,000. So this is the pavilion project that we saw recently with the grant from the MCC. What was it, 80s?
$87,000 in grants, but it has to be matched in a one-for-one from the town in some way.
Right.
We had pledged that we wouldn't be doing it from general fund revenues. The Patton Homestead Inc. folks have agreed to undertake some
30.
fundraising efforts to raise $37,000, leaving us with $50,000. There was a proposal that discussed a little bit at the last meeting about maybe trying to take it from the interest that was developed on the Patton Homestead Stabilization Fund for Fields, but that is, I think, viewed largely as messy and more difficult. The ARPA recommendation is mine. If the board is interested in providing funds to it, I think it's the cleanest, easiest way to get funds that won't impact the tax rate.
Was the
So-
interest included with the school's, ask at town meeting? Are they expecting the interest?
I think they were, and we've had some conversations with that group, and or at least the leaders of that group, and they said they'd be open to it, but they wanted to discuss it more, and like I said, I think that if you do want to pursue that, I think it will wind up with kind of a lot of discussions, a lot of people, maybe hard feelings, a lot of people questioning why we're doing it, so
I think
rather avoid that.
Yeah, I think that using the ARPA funding is, like Joe said, is cleaner. And with the money that's been set aside in that stabilization fund, it's difficult to pull different amounts out of it and for different things, and then it becomes a little more controversial. But
It's a
I think ultimately we're.
one-time expenditure, which makes sense.
Right.
But if the grant's for 87, we only give 50, does that mean the grant becomes 50?
It would, but we're counting on PHI to raise the additional money.
The grant doesn't go away at 87.
No, it doesn't go away.
It's up to $87,000,
One for one, okay.
one-for-one match.
I think they feel they can fundraise that amount fairly easily.
Yeah,
But they know for every dollar they're raising two, right? So,
right, because that accesses the state money,
right,
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
When we voted to give the Patton Homestead 5 years, we explicitly said in there that we would not give them money for anything like this. It's not saying I'm not in support of it, but that was like part of it, was that we were saying, we will not give any money. We're not gonna support it in any way. It needs to find a way to do this. So I do find it a little difficult that less than a year later, we're saying we're gonna throw them $50,000.
It's us, not them, but I hear what you're saying.
Right, but I mean, like explicitly, we said that in that meeting. 5 years, no money from us, figure it out.
We said no, yes, splitting hairs, but we said no tax dollars, right? But this is different than that. But, so I thought the same thing, right? It's like, but this is going to build a facility that has value to it, so even if we sold the property,
When we say
It would-
facility that adds value.
I'm asking, that's what I'm asking, like, does this add value? Like, if you, you're gonna put $100,000 into it, does it raise the value of the property? If you end up selling the property, you get it out of the property. That was a question I was thinking.
So, I mean, I think there's a couple different things that I would argue that it does add value to the property in terms of us being able to keep at least the open land. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that if we ever come to the decision of the
We would
board,
retain the ownership
that we
of
try
that,
to
probably.
retain ownership of the large grounds, and that pavilion would be part of where we would retain ownership so that
It
we
would
could
be, okay,
continue-
just trying to figure out,
so
okay.
we could continue to
still
utilize
be a
the
town
grounds
asset.
for recreational purposes. So that part of the grounds and the pathway around by the canoe launch and such would all be part of what I would recommend that you keep, because it's the part that has the most value with the least cost.
And I apologize, this thing been designed yet, or just an idea?
We've got conceptual drawings, and we've had some conversations with an architect that's done similar type of pavilion work in other communities. They're putting together a proposal for me that if we activate the grant and we raise the funds, then we'd be able to contract with them to complete the design.
Having not been here, to Carolyn's point, though, I'd be curious of the language, if it was make sure it's self-sufficient, or there'd be no cash or no tax impact, to Bill's point. I mean, do we know, was it, we would provide no funding?
I mean, the spirit of it, if you ask me, was that we were not gonna provide any funding. Like, we could split hairs about it now, but like, the spirit of the conversation was, we're not gonna put any more money into it. We're not gonna sell it for 5 years, so anything that it can do to sort of regenerate itself and find opportunities, like, great, but like, we were not going to approve, like, throwing more money at it.
And we're not saying we're selling it, but I
and-
think it's
and
such a valuable asset. I mean, I had the opportunity to go to some of the music nights, and I was like, wow, there's so much more we could
Yeah.
do, you know, in those open fields, and really leverage that property as a town facility, you know, versus, you know.
Yeah, and I see Carolyn's point, because we did talk about not spending any more money on it, but I do also kind of see the thing that this is federal money that we've been given, so it's not really tax. It's in the, I mean, it's the town money, but it's not, we didn't raise and appropriate it. We're using it from a grant, basically, so we're paying from a grant to use another grant, and the Patton Homestead PHI is also raising close to $40,000, so it's not impacting the taxes at all. So it's, I mean, we're really kind of splitting hairs, I think.
I mean, and maybe it's in here, and I just didn't see it, like, in theory, I love the idea, but I push back a little bit on the idea that, A, if you spend $87,000, you get $87,000 back. I don't think you do. And I'd like someone to name 5 events that we cannot have now without this, that we suddenly can't have with it. I think it's an asset in terms of, if we're having something, it's nice to have a pavilion. But my concern is more like the lack of activation of the property generally, not if we had a pavilion, we would suddenly be activating the property. And I'm not necessarily seeing that one for one there.
So I think what I'd say is that we've activated the property a bit in the last year and a half, 2 years, but we have also at times had to cancel events because of weather. Mild, you know, even just a mild rain means that you can't.
You just canceled the concert
You have to cancel a
last
concert
week or the
because
week
you
before.
can't.
But can you put a bunch of people from a concert in a fairly small pavilion? No, it's still raining on the concert.
Okay.
Like, you can't suddenly keep the outdoor wedding because there's a small pavilion. It's like,
How big is this pavilion?
It's,
Generally?
I think it's about 100 square feet of land area, maybe a little bit larger than that. The idea would be to you'd be able to keep the band sheltered, and then as long as it's not a torrential rain, you could still have the concert, rain or shine. People just bring umbrellas and listen in the rain. I've seen plenty of concerts where people.
It's as
do
much
it.
square footage as $173,000 to buy it.
Basically,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not like dying on any hills here. I just,
That's a good discussion.
it
Thank-
feels like we always say like, no, we're being serious. And then we're like, well, what's a pavilion?
We didn't say no more taxes, we said no new taxes. I mean, it's like you're splitting hairs, right? So,
Yeah.
But I think that it's a creative use of not appropriating money to make an improvement. And somebody went and worked really hard to get an $87,000 grant. That's a pretty big deal, right? From,
It was a joint effort between Holly, the patent director, and the patent homesteading folks.
and did they, just out of curiosity, was the application choices for things and they picked this, or was it only grant?
They applied for the
applied for this.
Outdoor space.
applied for the pavilion, right, because that was the thinking was that was the next step and kind of really.
But what I
building
didn't
out
see
what we can
on
do.
town hall renovation was relocation expense, and I believe you've told us in the past that you could save $500,000 by using the Patton Homestead. So technically, to cover the expense, they could charge us $50,000, you know?
Well, we
I
own
mean,
the
if
property.
somebody were to say, in the spirit of it, otherwise
We
you're
can
going
charge it
somewhere else.
ourselves. I mean, we own the property, not Patton Homesteading. Patton Homesteading is
No, I
a
know,
nonprofit
but,
that
you
helps,
know-
but.
Right, I'm just doing debits and credits here to prove we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're gonna get, over the next 2 years, we're gonna get a lot of value out of owning the building,
Yeah.
while we pursue.
100%, and I do think there's so much more eventing we could do there, and I look at Patton Park that I love, and we have a pavilion, but it's tiny, and it's on basically second base, you know, so it's, you know, you can do so much more there, and it gets pretty crowded, and there were weather issues, so I just see that being a nice area where people can collaborate and the community can get together, and that's part of the master steering plan. One of the major chapters is about open space and collaborating and providing programs for the community. But I keep going back to what she just said relative to, a year ago, this board, I guess, said we won't put another nickel into it. So that is the problem, that's why I brought it
I
around.
mean, I would go back and read the meetings, but we always talked about we were gonna go after grants, and we always talked about we're not gonna spend more money to fund the day-to-day operations of it.
Right.
So I'm, you know, I think, and I hear what you're saying, and I had the same thing went through my head. Like we said, we're not, but it's different. I think it's different to me because it's a grant, and we're using a grant for a grant, and we're not asking the town to raise your tax, appropriate taxes to sort of, to hire people to run it, to.
Right.
Operations.
Not an operation.
Not for heat, not for lighting, it's, you know, it's sort of an amenity that might, but I know, I hear what you're saying, but does it, as long as, what you said, like, if we end up, which I don't think we should ever do, selling the property, we wouldn't sell this part of the property, is the goal. We keep the open spaces, we go in the open space.
Right, we'd sell the house,
The
and the
house,
stable.
the
and
road
the
side.
immediate lawn
Not the
around it,
parking
but
and
that's
the-
it.
My biggest concern with selling the whole property is that it could go back into chapter land and reduce the amount of taxes we could get on it. So I'd rather sell a portion of the property small enough to avoid that.
And have the public still be able to access.
And still have
the-
public have access to the open land that, you know, a lot of people are starting to utilize. I mean, that doesn't pay us. And Holly has had interest from people who wanted to do small, you know, small parties, less than 100 people, of, you know, bridal showers or, you know, kids' birthdays and things. But those right now have to be, you know, weather-dependent uses. The pavilion will be multifunctional. It could be used to do presentations, movie nights, concert nights. It could also be used by the public to have, you know, birthday party or
Family
so
reunion.
family
Can you just
reunion, small
walk, can
family
you
reunion.
walk me through this real quick? Okay, let's say that we, just so I understand, like, the best-case scenario, worst case, if we, right now, you ask us to vote, because it's ARPA funds, we can dictate it. We say you can authorize $50,000. Okay, so now it's $50,000. Now, the grant's for 87. Let's say they don't raise any money, okay?
I'll contact the MCCC about altering the grant agreement so that it's.
So the question is,
50 and then 50
question
makes
is, we can
$1,000.
say, we authorize $50,000 as long as,
Hiding.
provided they raise the 26.
37, yeah.
37.
37, right? So we could make a condition on, well, it's gonna be our money, it's gotta be a community investment,
That's actually good.
right? Okay, so that's one thing we
CPC
do.
does that
I'm
all
not
the
sold
time.
on this.
with Wenham, right?
I just feel like
No,
we don't
no.
need, like, of all the things we need and all the things ARPA funds can go to, like, $50,000 on a pavilion on a bunch of land that hardly anyone, like, I just,
And
do we have $50,000 we could throw at the senior center? Do we have $50,000 we could, like, really? $50,000 on a pavilion?
But it's 50 to get 180, so the payback on the investment is 50 to get 170, whatever, $3,000. Like, that's the,
Where did the
No, it's
173,000?
87 total, so that's the cap.
no, 50 plus 87 plus
No, 50
37.
plus 37,
Plus
right?
37.
Total.
Oh, yeah, you're right, you're right.
No, it's a total, we're getting 100, we're getting 87 times
174.
2,
Right.
which is 174.
Doesn't matter.
Right? So 174 so we're doing a $50,000 investment to get a $174,000 impact to town-owned property that we would never sell. I think that's a
good return.
That's a good return on your investment.
Like I
The
said,
second thing is-
I'm not dying on this hill. I just,
The second one was, what else do we dictate? Once the money goes to, who does it actually go to? It goes to the patent,
We'll
like who
retain it.
votes on the design and the location of this pavilion?
It's gonna go where the pool used to be.
I know, but who? I'm just saying, like, at
But
the end of the day.
It'll be up to the administration, and if you want input into the design, we can bring the design presentation into when it's complete.
But it
But it's
doesn't
not-
have to come back to any board, it can just be done.
You can make it subject to approval.
It's gonna have to go,
your
the
approval
planning
if you
board will
want.
have to.
how does it,
I think we can get a building
Qualify
permit
for
without needing to go to
ARPA.
the planning board.
Okay.
So would you?
how does it qualify for ARPA?
does anything, does this town
So the
property?
IRS changed the rule on ARPA qualification. Any community that got less than $10 million in ARPA funds can use it as revenue replacement. So
Got it, okay.
you can use it essentially
Kinda have
for
carte
anything
blanche
you,
with it for the most
for
part.
anything that you would normally spend town government funds on, you could use it for. So it's allowed.
So not to belabor this unless you have anything
No, I
else
mean,
to
if y'all
say.
believe it, and I will,
If anybody wants to make a motion, and then we can debate it further, or we can vote on it.
I would say, I make a motion.
Nobody moved.
Allocate $50,000.
I'm sorry, sir, but nobody recognized me, and now you want to vote on something I wanted to vote.
Hold on, Virginia, just one second. Let Bill make the motion, and then I'll recognize you. Just got to raise your hand.
So I make a motion to allocate $50,000 of ARPA funds to match the Mass Development Cultural Facilities Fund grant, pending that the Patton Homestead Inc. raise at least $25,000.
37.
No, I'm saying at least $25,000.
getting tricky?
I don't want it to go away if we only raise, if it's only 75 and 75 is my point. Like, I'm giving them a,
Okay.
I'm giving them
You
a,
give him a $12,000 window?
yes.
Okay.
You can change it, that's my motion. And that it comes back in front of the select board for
The plan.
review. The plan does.
Second.
Second by Caroline. All right, Virginia, I recognize you now if you want to speak.
Thank you. I really didn't want to interfere earlier, speaking out of turn, but I was afraid nobody noticed, and then it would be old news. Thank you again. I happen to agree with our lady select person that the planning board says, and they voted and talked about it and decided out the Patton Homestead with any more money than what they can get for themselves. And they did give them 5 more years, which I thought was amazing, since it started back in 2016, where they had 3 years to prove themselves, and then it went a few years more, and then we had a pandemic, and now you're giving them 5 more years. And we also took the director and put her as under the auspices of our recreation board, so the town pays their director, which is something else we were not going to do. I believe that the select boards, as they change, all end up coming up with the same idea that they want to keep the place, and in order to do so, they have to figure out some way of making some money. I also believe that our town manager sees it as a piece of property just sitting there, and why don't we use it and do something with it for the town? And I think it's just sort of like part of his basic makeup and part of his description of his job is to do something with it. So I can't say I blame him at all. But I believe the townspeople have said at least twice at town meeting that we shouldn't be giving them money to stay in. Just as we should give them time, and if they don't do it, we cut our losses and go home. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. All right, so we have a motion on the floor.
In a second.
Been seconded. Any further discussion?
Do we have any information on, the financials of the homestead today? I mean, relative to the incremental tax revenue that it brings in and other stuff, where we could say it is self-sufficient at this point and it's not a draw on the town. I mean, that seems to be what I just heard, that it's not a draw on the town versus putting more money into it.
I think that point gets debated. The
Yeah.
task force set that stuff up.
I know,
for
but
select board this year.
we should have a position on it.
Well,
So it's,
Yes,
I think
it's like it does cost us annually, but if you take into account the money that it made initially, it sort of pays for itself,
Yep.
not in perpetuity, but like forward. And so the debate that Joe was talking about, they came and did a presentation, and John McGrath was very involved, and you could probably reach out to him. He loves talking about Patton Homestead.
He can send you all the data,
He can
too,
send you
just so
all the,
got
the
John.
pie, the pie charts and all that. And so there was a very healthy conversation at that point about like, do we just cut our losses? And it was sort of like, well, the money went from the right pocket to the left pocket, and then we put some of it in the back pocket, and now we're asking if there's money left in the left pocket. It's like, well, you're right, we have to send people out there to mow the lawn, and we have to do all the maintenance, and it does sort of cost us, but the initial amount of money that we had actually covers that, but we just sort of took that out of the equation. And at that point, we had said, like, and this is what we were just talking about, like, Holly had said it's really difficult when we keep talking about, like, maybe we're gonna sell it, or maybe it's not gonna be here anymore, we're gonna change the use of it, that we can't do any long-term planning, we can't get any long-term partnerships. And so the vote that we took was, we agree not to sell the property for 5 years, to give them the opportunity to think of sort of long-term activation and programming, but we weren't gonna be putting, however we wanna remember the, I don't, you know, the details of it, we weren't going to be actively putting any more money into it. But that sort of time horizon would give us the opportunity to activate the space, and
Right.
look at ways for it to become more of a,
And we're in year,
like, this was maybe a year ago.
Maybe.
It was last
so
fall.
we're in the
Yeah, last
5-year
fall,
window,
November.
and we're thinking we can better activate it with a pavilion.
That's
That's the hope.
point of applying for
Right.
funds, yeah.
And with the kind of carrying cost, I think just sitting there, it's
Right.
maybe, and it's rough, it's maybe 30,000 to carry the property, and I'm spitballing here, but, you know, we have other assets like Patton Park that we pay and don't ever think of, that we have a carrying cost on all the maintenance for that as well. And I think that with the homestead from the sale of the Ridge, Patton Ridge, I think that it's like 180 or so thousand a year in tax
It was,
revenue or
when I
something
first got
like
here, it was
that.
146,000 a year in tax revenue comes from those houses up on Patton Ridge, and it goes up obviously every year when the taxes go up. So I think it might be just around 180 now.
And it costs like 120 to maintain the property and the staff.
Well, including the staff and everything, and then we moved Holly into the recreation department, so that's not.
That's what I mean, see, we move things, and then the money goes to the right pocket, and we don't claim it on
But
the left
she's in
pocket.
charge of programming the property and finding, you know, it's not about, you know, and she doesn't get paid by Wenham at all, so we incur her just, but in the recreation department budget.
So there are some pockets plays here. I do think it'll add to the viability of the property to add it. I mean, I don't think, you know, my initial comment, I wanted to push it, but as I think about it, no, in lieu of rent type of thing, but you could use that without a pavilion, right? And you're still gonna save the 500,000. So, all right, I have no further
All right,
comment.
all those in.
I mean, yeah, and I think just to add to it, I think that we're not, two things that sort of segregated or separated from me is, one, we're not doing something that's gonna create a maintenance headache, right? We're not doing something that's like not gonna
The
cost us
maintenance of
5 or
it's gonna
10.
be minimal.
Right,
So it'll be
and
minimal.
if you're telling me it's not, if we ever had to sell the property, we wouldn't sell this part of it, makes me think it's worth that piece too, right?
Right. I think all the less grass we'll have to mow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you wrap it in Christmas lights too,
Yeah,
holiday lights.
Holiday lights.
Holiday lights.
that'd be nice.
All right,
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, one nay. Up next, we have approve reorganization of master plan steering committee for implementation. Joe or Bill, you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, I can speak to it, Joe, unless you want something to say, you know.
Well, just real quickly to
Yep.
help Bill's conversation, you did have in your packets a string of emails between Bill
Yep.
as the chair and Patrick Graffett, the planning director, on kind of members of the MPSC who are interested in staying on, and those who are, you know, kind of feeling it's been a while and they want to move on to other things. So there's, in that string is also a recommendation from town council that you actually have a vote, an affirmative vote to reorganize the committee if that's what you want to do. So as opposed to just let them fall off and then try to play games with quorums based on who's on the committee and who's not.
Right, and I'll just add quickly before Bill doesn't, I hate to have him probably redundant, but they're having an issue with quorum, so this will help with that and help them get it through the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, initially there were, I think, 13 people on this committee. That's a lot for any committee. Add to that the troubles. It's 2 years old, this committee, and there are some folks who are just, you know, they've done their share. I thank them for it, but time to move on. So we have had quorum issues where we've shown up here and we haven't been able to have a meeting. In addition to that, we're at a phase in the project where You know, I did meet with the consultant group, and their recommendation is have 5 to 7 people. That's a more effective group. We're going to utilize some homework assignments, so each meeting is more efficient, and we've really kind of restructured and set expectations. We're going to meet the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30, anyone interested. But really, the ideal size of the group to be efficient is 7 right now, in the opinion of me and the consultant. So I guess the ask tonight is to restructure down to 7 from the 13. We've already had 3 or 4 resignations, so instead of going back to find alternates to come back in, you know, I propose we, right-size the team to 7. We move on and continue this through November.
Well, I know this might be a disappointment because Caroline was looking to get back on that committee, no?
Well, she was on it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. She was great.
If you so I guess the mechanics of it, I'm not sure I fully understand, which is, are we reducing to 7 and then you will be asking for resignation from an additional 2 people? Or are we reducing to 7 and reappointing a fresh 7? Like,
Yeah, no, we already had some resignations, so
Right.
we've honored those. Instead of replacing them, that brings us to the 7. I sent an email.
with the resignation.
Yeah,
at 7.
I sent an
Okay.
email, got a commitment from every board member that they would attend on the second Wednesday of every month, through November. And we got, head nods by 7 people, so it's already people.
He's kind of
who are
done
on
all
the-
the.
Got it. I thought you were saying you had a couple of
No.
resignations, but not quite to 7, and I was like,
No.
what happens?
Yeah, you're off the island, right?
Yeah. Great.
And there's not a lot of motions left. It's really kind of going through key issues and writing this and editing documentation, so.
7 seems big to me for that, but.
It is, but instead of asking anyone to leave, I just, I do know we can hit a quorum on that, and they've committed to it. I didn't want to ask anyone to leave.
It's good of you. So do we need a fresh charter,
I think we just need to make a motion to approve the reorganization of the Master Plan Steering Committee for 7 members.
And to carry that through
It's just a committee,
implementation, because
so-
that'll set.
And
sunset it.
carry that through the implementation process.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get all that? Do you have a question?
No, I don't care.
Okay.
Have at it.
Have at it. All in favor?
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Much appreciated.
All right, up next, we have open the warrant for special town meeting on Monday, November 6th at 7 PM at the Hamilton Wenham Regional High School Auditorium.
Okay,
Anybody want to make a motion, and then we
Make a
can,
motion to open the warrant for special town meeting on Monday, November 6th at 7 PM at the Hamilton Wenham Regional High School Auditorium.
all right, second by anybody?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, warrant's open. Joe, can you give us the kind of brief, we kind of know what we have. We have, if you're not in the loop, there's 2 additional
yeah.
um,
So-
asks.
Obvious ones, oop,
Sorry, there's bugs.
I thought that was a sneeze for a second.
are you okay?
Yeah, it was just hot, tried to open the window, there was a beetle, it was a whole thing. I hate bugs. Okay.
Sorry about that. Try to have facilities fumigate the
It
window sills.
got very warm, right? Did it
did.
not
It
get
did,
very?
yeah.
Yeah, the air
Last
conditioner
couple
kicked off.
minutes.
Okay, well,
It cycled off, so.
Yeah, it really got hot.
So, obvious ones are bills of a prior year, that right now, we don't necessarily believe we'll need that. As of the moment, we're just closing the books now, and we don't have any bills of prior year, but I have it in there as a placeholder, because between now and September, we may have a bill of a prior year. You can always remove that if that's the case. Approve the CPC request for town hall renovation funding of $500,000, which CPC has already approved. Approve the free crash request for town hall renovation funding, which is $2 million. Approve Browns Hill Overlay District. There's been some movement there, and there'll be some things to consider, but that is still being pursued. And there's an approve amendment to groundwater protection overlay designation in Browns Hill, if necessary, as a companion article to the previous. Then the 2 new articles that Sean spoke of come forward from the community. First, the senior tax deferral program is something that Jay Burnham and others have been circulating and familiarizing the town with for several months. We had originally, the board had originally talked about potentially putting that off until the spring. Jay and his friends would prefer that not happen. After discussing it with Sean and Bill in the agenda setting, they agreed that there's no sense in making them wait. And so if you authorize that to be here in the warrant, I will put Jay in touch with town council to make sure that the article gets properly worded so that it'll pass muster with the Attorney General after town meeting concludes its vote. Some of the thinking that went into that decision by Bill and Sean, and they can speak for themselves, is that Jay had basically said that he put forward, he was preparing a citizen's petition. And my concern with that is that a citizen's petition question, we can't dedicate town council resources to make sure it's right. So it comes forward as it is, and we have to put it on the warrant as it is. And then if there's anything technically wrong with it, we're kind of stuck with it, and we really can't do anything with it. The Attorney General turns it down. Yeah. And that just kind of confuses people, creates
Then it's advisory as well, and if there's something wrong with the language, then we have to sponsor it and bring it back, and then it's...
So we just thought it'd be easier to just take ownership of it up front and move it forward that way. Similar, but slightly different, this was not, going to be a citizen's petition question that I know of, but
Related.
related. The Hamilton Board of Health and the Hamilton Foundation had both done the legwork to look into a septic loan program that several other towns around us have. Part of this comes from the Hamilton Foundation having received some requests to provide funds to help with septic rehabilitations for people who need the financial assistance, but that's a very expensive job. So they had done the work to look into it. Again, I had spoken with David Smith, the Board of Health, originally about putting this on the agenda for the annual town meeting and kind of trying to do a kind of a package deal with the senior tax deferral program. But since the tax deferral program is moving forward, we thought it made sense to move this as a companion article to show that the town's trying to take care of our residents that are in need of assistance. So both these would be on there. I don't think there'll be a lot of resistance to them. I believe the FinCom's already started meeting with the proponents of these initiatives, and if the select board initiates it or puts it on the warrant itself, we can have town council work to make sure that the article is technically correct.
Comments?
And Heather is here, so.
Heather, do you want to say anything?
She's a big,
No, but I'm so happy. That's why I'm sitting in this hot room.
I figured that's why you were here tonight.
There's a lot of hot air in here.
Bill, I didn't say that.
Any comments on either of those? The last two things, anyway? I mean, the other ones are, with the planning board and the overlay, are all kind of in flux at the moment.
The only thing I would say is that,
Sorry.
The only thing I would say is that the Hamilton Foundation gets requests, but really the loan program would be for people that don't come to Hamilton
Right.
Foundation. It's just regular citizens that are all of a sudden getting a $40,000 bill to have to replace their septic
Right.
system.
You specifically don't
So-
have to come to the Hamilton
You do
Foundation to
not.
ask.
Their
You can
two are not related. We just happen to have had a couple people ask about it that came through that route, but we know from talking to the Board of Health that there are other requests that have come through that have nothing to do with it. So I just want to be careful that we don't tie it to that
Right.
kind of a thing.
No,
So-
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. That's a good
Virginia's very
clarification. Virginia, do you have something to add?
Yes, I think that the state still has their program where they, if you're replacing your system, you are eligible for quite a large chunk of tax credit. I think it's up to $15,000 over 3 years. As far as I know, that's still available.
I think it is.
It is. I believe it is. So that'd be in addition to.
It'd be in addition to it. So this is just helping more people, I guess.
Is there an income qualification, if you will, on the program, or is it for anybody who?
So if you authorize me to have this put on the warrant, I'll have town council work with the Board of Health Chair, David Smith, on the information that he found out while in his research for this project. So we'll have a completed article before you sometime in September.
to my knowledge, there's no.
Okay, thanks. Two great
Carolyn, I know
programs.
you talk to David every once in a while when he's out walking the dog. Is he giving you any more details about this?
No, but I can flag him down next time. Yeah, because I do wonder, like, is there any financial impact to the town? Is it just facilitation of the?
It's a facilitation.
It's a facilitation.
There's a little bit
We're
of.
kind of a middleman
Yeah,
in the
a
program.
broker.
A broker.
To your point,
yeah,
like if
it's-
there's a default of any sort, who's liable?
Yeah.
Those pop into my
Like, is
head.
there a reason not to do it? I guess is, the Cliffs Notes I would be
I
looking
haven't
for.
heard any negative from the other towns. We get money in a grant from the state, we hold it in an account specifically for the program. As applicants apply to the program, the town passes the money through and the repayment goes to the state. We don't.
But do
get
we
involved
have
in
to
the money
vet
out.
the applications and be responsible for determination of
I'm
grant?
not sure, but I don't.
Yeah, what if they
think
put a pool in place or something?
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I think that they pay invoices. I don't think the money goes to the
You're
homeowner. I
pay-
think
yeah,
they
you're
pay
paying
invoices.
contract.
But they'll come back with that program
That's
to
right.
us once.
And there's two programs. One, there are income limits to the septic tank repair loan, which is sort of what Virginia was just talking about, but this is a different program, slightly different. So just depends on which program, so.
All right. I think it makes sense to position them both together.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to reach out to Jay to answer some of these questions. I guess my concern like, the same concerns I had for the citizens petition, I almost more have putting this directly on the warrant, which is, I mean, if we put it directly on the warrant, obviously town council can help, sharpen the language, but they can't help soften any further than what Jay is willing.
No, your proposal here is that the select board sponsor an article that would change the senior tax deferral program.
Right.
We currently have to a new one, and that would be developed by our town council, consistent with what other communities are doing currently and with what state law allows.
Is your worry that Jay's vision and the select board's vision would deviate?
Are somewhat misaligned.
I have a meeting scheduled to meet with Jay on Thursday to get an idea of what his goals are for it, but, we'll talk through with him what.
Well, and I
Yeah, we're
think if there was a Venn diagram, and it's been a while since I've seen an iteration of Jay's proposal, but what is desirable, what is feasible, and what is legal,
Yeah.
those were three different things. And I don't know what's gonna happen in that center pocket when those three things come together,
Right.
but
And I know
his
Jay's
was a
been,
very generous plan that had no data modeling behind it, it had no fiscal modeling, it had no
No, he's-
propensity modeling, and none of that.
He's changed, he's
Okay.
working off a model that's actually been adopted in other communities.
Okay.
In fact, I've spoken to the town manager in Lexington that's already enacted a similar project. And it's similar to one we have in place, only it's a little bit more open. The one we currently have, the income limits are very difficult to meet and things. This one is different, and it helps seniors, not just seniors who are poor, so.
Right, well, that was where there were no income limits on the original ones that I saw.
This would be modeled on what other communities have already done.
Okay.
So it's already passed muster with the state.
and so what we'll do, we're not committing anything tonight, we're just opening the warrant to
Yeah.
say what could possibly be on it and what form it will be. So, one thing we can do tonight is we can make a motion or not, but we could kind of charge Joe to talk with David Smith on the septic one and talk to Jay about the tax deferral one, and then kind of see where it goes, and then have some kind of Jay or David or both of them come in and talk to it and go from there. And then we can decide to sponsor it or not. But I would assume we would if we all get all the details worked out. I mean, it seems like a good thing.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
I mean, we're not gonna end up with this and a J version as.
Right. That's the hope.
That's the
anyway.
goal. But it's a tight window. I see August 7th, right? So you'll coordinate with Jay. Good.
All right. Any new business?
I didn't have any.
Should we vote on that? Do we need to?
Yeah,
Oh, we already did that,
You
right?
voted,
We
you
opened it.
had a
Voted to
motion,
open, correct.
you have a motion and a second, you didn't vote.
Yeah, I don't think we voted.
You did?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
didn't record that, so 4-0.
We voted to open it,
We
yeah.
voted open it, yeah.
And you're okay with the
Gonna vote
articles
against
that
it,
are
but-
currently on it?
No, that was Patton.
You're okay with the articles that are currently listed?
I don't remember voting on the opening of the
We
warrant.
did.
We did?
We did.
I think we did too, yeah.
We did.
I said we didn't, but I remember we did now.
Okay.
We can do it again if you want.
No. I've had plenty of warrants.
Make a motion for
missed that.
Carolyn to
Apologize.
vote, open the warrant.
Let's just make a motion to get me off of this board.
Any new business besides voting Caroline off the island? No? All right. I'll take a motion to,
Adjourn?
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
okay, motion to adjourn, second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you, Virginia, for staying with us. Thank you, Heather, for staying with us.
Thank you, Heather.
So it's
Any last
August
comment?
7th.